Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. Wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for sharing the show around. Thank you for sticking with us on this journey as we continue just to bring some real cool discussions, some real cool guests, and talk about some great topics with you guys. And this one is one that I think everybody out there kind of has an opinion about. And I think our players, especially at the youth level, are kind of playing more and more games than ever before. A lot of them, as you guys who are listening know, a lot of them have trainers that are working on a whole bunch of different things as well with them. Our players definitely get a lot of gym time doing a whole bunch of different things. And one of the big issues that is being discussed a lot is for our youth players is what that balance is like for them when it comes to how many games they're playing, how many skills that they're working on, how much time they're devoting to each, what skills are they working on, how many games is too many games, when are they ready to play games, when should they just be focusing on skills, whole bunch of different stuff. And so we're going to have a discussion today with my guests, just kind of talking about that balance between playing games, working on skills, what that looks like. We're talking about some habits that players can be working on, talk about training players, the state of youth basketball. We're going to touch on a bunch of different things. So no matter where it is kind of in the world you're listening to, this is a topic that definitely will apply to you and the things going on in your basketball community. So joined by a real busy man today, owner of PhD Athletics, director of the Schaumburg Feeder Basketball, and he's probably got 20 other titles that he does as well, working in the basketball world. Coach Mike Mallett is joining us. Coach Mike, thanks so much for joining us. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this, especially since recently, LeBron James and John Lucas III kind of had a little viral video go talk kind of about this playing and training and skilling and drilling. So
having
a conversation for sure.
Real topical. Coach, let's go ahead and start with your basketball journey, your coaching journey, and the training journey that you went into. So where's the game taking you? How did it lead you into all of the different areas that you're working at right now?
Yeah, for sure, man. For me, it started off back in high school where I was a two-sport athlete. And then once college came around, I went the football route, but always in the back of my head, knowing that I would get back into hoops. Just when college comes, you're a two-sport athlete, you kind of get pushed to that with your parents. You sit down and have that conversation. You get pushed to play the sport where they're going to pay the most money. And, I love my time playing football in college, but for me personally, it was always my dream to be a coach and run my own basketball program and kind of help inspire and motivate the youth. And so once I got out of college, I was blessed to be able to be offered a position as the fifth grade basketball coach. And ever since that, man, it's the past 6 years, it's been growing and expounding. I've done 17U all the way down to 14U AAU. I've done all the youth grades now at this point, fourth all the way up to eighth. And just excited to continue to help and continue to grow and mature young men and women. I think that's one thing I love the most about this whole gig. And so, yeah, man, in the training space, I was in corporate America for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was in corporate America, I was coaching ball and parents were always asking me, hey, why don't you train? Why don't you train? And for me, I wanted to take from a personal standpoint, I felt like I was disconnected from the game for 4 years playing college football. And I just wanted to see everything. I wanted to see what youth sports needed, what AAU was like nowadays. And so I took my time, I did my due diligence, and, into starting last year, I was able to kind of start my own thing and go full time with it. And we've been kicking and running since then. So super excited, man. Youngest client, 7 years old. My oldest is 22. It's never a dull moment at all.
That is a whole different practice plan from one to the other that you would be making for those different ages. That's crazy. So You've coached, as we talked about, a variety of different ages. You've worked with players of all different ages, probably all different skill set. And so just curious, because you've kind of seen almost, I feel like, every age that you possibly could here. Is there one age group in particular that you find to be like any more challenging? If so, what makes them challenging? And if not, if there isn't one that's more challenging than the other, then why do you think that is, that there maybe isn't one? Or so I'll let you kind of have at it with that question.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think when it comes to coaching and ages, I think they each age level possess their own challenges. When
Mhm.
you get to that third, fourth, and fifth and sixth grade level, depending on how advanced your team is, they really challenge you as a communicator. Understanding when you got the younger guys, you got to be careful in what you say, because they'll kind of take what you say like to literal standpoint. So you got to mean what you say and say what you mean when it comes to the younger guys. And don't. And one of the biggest things when it
Mhm.
comes to the younger guys, for me and girls, I don't want to just be on the guy thing, but is to understanding the development of the child's brain. And I think a lot of times we look at kids and think like, oh man, the kids, like we don't want to give them a lot, but the development of the brain is it does the most development, and it's able to hold information at the younger you are. It's like learning a language at a young age. So a lot of times when we're teaching the game of basketball, I feel like when it comes to the kids, we kind of dumb it down early, and they get older and they kind of lack those necessary terminologies and little tidbits about the game. But if we taught them as a youth, at a younger age, then they'd have a little bit more clear understanding, and the basketball IQ would be a little bit higher personally. When it comes to the high school kids, especially boys, it's understanding how to communicate to them the importance of the small things, because
Mhm.
boys get bigger, they get stronger, they get more athletic. There's a lot of things going on within the internet space. And so it's sometimes the communication with them, you have to kind of, what I like to call, speak their language. And you, as an adult, we have a little bit like more life experience. We articulate and use different types of words, and sometimes you got to take a step back and see what the kids are into a little bit more, and kind of relate to them in that standpoint and speak their language. So when it comes to the high school boys, man, you definitely got to be a little bit more relatable. Got to be a little bit more in tune with what's going on in the world right now, and be able to have that moment of time where you serve as more so like, because the older you get, the more pressure, especially in the AAU scene. It's like, oh, 15, 16U, like those summers come and go so fast.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're 17U, you're like, oh my
Like,
gosh. So
what
it's just,
happened?
yeah, what happened? Like, where the time go? And that's even what happened with me on my AAU career. So one of the biggest things that I love is just, kind of to take the pressure off the older kids. Like, guys, like at the end of the day, man, like we're gonna ball, and we're gonna play hard, and we're gonna do all those necessary things to get you guys exposure. But let's not forget the fun, the fun part of this. Like, for some people, high school basketball will be the end of the basketball journey. For some people,
Sure.
eighth grade basketball will be the end of the basketball journey. And one thing I know, and I'm like kind of on a tangent right now, but one thing I know about sports in general is that like a lot of times you don't remember like the games and the wins and losses. You kind of remember like those moments that you have like in between tournament games, and all the guys, you and everybody going to McDonald's and you guys all hanging out. Like those are the type of memories you remember.
Mhm.
Like sometimes with the older kids, I think they put so much pressure on them from their parents, coaches. Like, hey, you can be this, right? We have expectations for them. Sometimes we just forget to take a step back and have fun, and show gratitude and grace and enjoy those moments in time. So I think for the older guys, just being able to remember that it's just a game, and it should be fun. I think that's very important, and that's where it becomes a challenge. And then for the younger guys, just not dumbing the game down for them, and giving them everything that they can handle at a young age. So as they continue to grow as basketball players, some of the terminology stuff won't hold them back as they grow. So
It's funny, that part that you just mentioned, because I've had experience working in K-8 schools before, and working with kids who are a little bit younger, and I've seen, people I know and people I'm friends with who have helped with camps or led camps for younger players, those that are in like third or fourth grade. And it's so funny sometimes when when these people are leading these camps, they talk to like these third and fourth graders almost like they're kindergartners, and I'm like,
right.
oh no, like you don't have to speak to them in like one syllable, like four word sentences. They can handle more than that. Like they can absorb and
Exactly.
get it. I get it though. It's hard sometimes if you've been so far away and from young ones and kids, you might think like, oh man, I can't say more than 5 words to them. They're not going to get it. But no, you're right. Like they'll pick up on stuff. They'll get it if you hold those like high standards and high
Exactly.
expectations for them and give it to them like that.
And for me also in that space as well, it's like even if you might be telling them something that day, they understand, but sometimes they have physical limitations that won't allow them to do it. But the fact
Hmm.
of that is you kind of told them and showed them how to do it. Then as they get older or as they get a little stronger, you'll just randomly see them start to do it. And I think that's kind of like that's like the beauty in like dealing with youth sports and coaching and training the younger guys. So
Yeah, it's kind of funny though. Like even if they don't like get it, like maybe when they grow into it and they hear a coach, tell them to do something or bring up a concept, they're like, "Oh, I've at least heard of this before. I know what this is." And like that will get them that much further ahead because they've already had exposure to the idea and everything.
exactly. And it could be something as simple as understanding what free throw line extended means or a baseline or the short corner. Like you get into high school, you're trying to you had a basketball tryout and the coach tells you to run to the short corner and you're like one of those freshmen who don't know what that is. Like you might be a good ball player, you might have the skills necessary to make the team, but if you look like you don't know where to run, the coach is yelling all these different basketball terminologies, like that it can be so simple, like all the way down to that. So
Yeah, and then you get a situation like that in a tryout and you don't know what the short corner is. And now you're nervous because you don't know this. You get in your own head and you're all like nervous about stuff because you feel unconfident now, feel like you're way behind everyone. And just like something simple as that, right? Can like just
yeah.
take you out of your game on that sort of tryout or something because of that terminology. No, you're absolutely right. Um, all right, go ahead and give me your belief overall about like what that balance is between games and skills. So when you're working with players, what do you or what is your general philosophy, I guess, rather on like what that balance looks like between working on skills and then being ready to play a bunch of games?
Yeah, man, I think it's a delicate conversation and it's a very interesting one. But for me, I look at it like this: if for it is age by age, but I think that the baseline of basketball should start and end with your ability to make and take layups. And can you make a right hand layup, a left hand layup, a jump stop right hand layup, and a jump stop left hand layup? And can you jump off one leg, both legs, right and left hand layups? I think that and can you be able to pivot left foot and pivot right foot? Those I think are some of the most simple yet effective skills that a lot of kids lack. And I think sometimes when you got really, really good players, really advanced athletes at the youth level, they end up having more of an emphasis on the skills that they're strong at rather than coaches and trainers building up the game overall and really continue to treat just because there's some kids that might be athletically more advanced than other kids, we still have like a baseline that I think that needs to be established before kids just go and get on the circuit and start playing a bunch of games, 6, 8, 10 games a weekend. Because what happens is you practice 3 times, two to 3 times a week for AAU for the good programs, and then you play 6 games. It's gonna be tough to get those extra 1 or 2 days in during that season in order to work on your game. So for the older kids, my biggest thing is your game should be fundamentally sound. And at the end of every season, whether it be AAU, your basketball season, your fall season, your winter season, we should be able to sit back and evaluate, what are some things in which you need to improve on. And
Hmm.
once you sit down and have that honest conversation with yourself, the next step is can I grow these skills in game? Am I going to take some time by myself in order to grow my skills? And for me, man, one thing I wanted to touch on is I
Sure.
think one of the biggest things is like, although like when I say drills and skills versus playing games, it's also the simple fact of the matter is of like I think drills and skills is equal to pickup basketball as well, and the playing 21 and playing the 32s of the world. I think that is also in line with skills and drill because basketball, as much of it is a skill game, it's also a field game. And a lot of times we got kids making moves before they need to move them. And when I meet a new kid, especially a high school kid, I say, look, your first move is pivot off your left foot, push, swing, go right. and then we go left. And then after that, we'll build your game from that. But if you're going against some people and they can't stop you from going right, going left, straight line drive, then what else do we need to be doing out here? What else do we need to be doing out here?
So like you gotta, and I think that's probably one of the tricky things, right? People think about working with a trainer, or I'm going to do this. Like you probably got a lot of people who just like want to work on all these combinations and all these moves and things like that, and not, and they're trying to do maybe like way too much and more than they'll ever be asked to do, or more than they'll ever be able to actually do in a game situation, right?
Definitely, for sure. And it's super interesting, but for me, man, it's all about understanding the person you have in front of you and how to get the most out of them. I might have a kid who I can tell he's super, super enamored with, wanting to be able to put it between his leg, behind his back. Then I'll just take a step back and tell him, like, hey, like, what's your goals in basketball? Okay, you want to be a Division I college basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can sit down and look at the top 15 teams in the NCAA. I guarantee you that most of those teams don't have a 20-point score. And two, they're probably running 10 to 15 sets a game. And so you don't even get those moments of times where you do get to be able to pound it out and ISO it. And then I could take it a step farther and say, hey, let's go watch your favorite NBA player. I guarantee you there's more often than not, he's catching the ball and ripping to his hip and getting to a spot and making the easiest, most direct path line to the basket, the easiest way to score. Mm-hmm. And kind of when you break that down a little bit to them and they're locked in with you, I think they see the importance of the simplicity of the game. A lot of times we got to challenge our athletes, like, hey, like I do this a lot of practice. I'm like, hey, can you make 15 right-hand layups in a row, right? And that's a lot of times just about having a good amount of focus. And then they get through it and make 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then like they just get too comfortable with it and they miss one. And I was like, look, if somebody told you if you can make 15 right-hand layups in a row for $1 million, you'd be like, yeah, for sure I can do it. And then you get actually into that moment in time.
Yeah. Then they're locked in.
So it's when it comes, like I said, man, when it comes to understanding the importance of developing skill and that the basis of and then playing a bunch of games, I think one of the most important things is understanding what your weaknesses are. And if you're comfortable enough to have that conversation with yourself and your coaches are comfortable to have that conversation with you, and then from there we gauge, okay, hey, am I building the right skills level with the basketball program that I am playing with? Mm-hmm. Then okay, we're okay with you, being a part of a program that's teaching you the right way and showing you the right things and teaching the game the right way and giving you the opportunity to grow and building your skills just as much as they're building you as a basketball player as well. So
how many players, when you're working with them, I know you talked about, the very basic fundamentals of left-hand layup, right-hand layup, the pivots, going a hop 1 foot, things that we would hope that our players would kind of start with kind of as their building blocks. When you're working with players, how many of them do you work with who just don't have those foundational skills? Do you work with players, or have you worked with players who maybe have had a lot of like game exposure and are playing in a bunch of games, but are lacking those base skills?
Oh yeah. And the kids who don't have those base skills, they'll have flashes of great moments. They do a lot of things well, but they lack the consistency in it. And it's like, yo, like if you can just step left, right, and stepping into your jump shot, you will start to make them a lot more. If you could step right, left off the pull up and understand that your left foot is not supposed to go all the way in front of your right and just slightly be behind and have that body control, then you'll start to make more consistent shots. And the people who kind of understand that and lock in early on the importance of those smaller nuances and how they affect consistency and rhythm, then like they grow much faster and they have much more consistency in what they're trying to accomplish. And a lot of times it's about timing too, man. Like when I get some high school kids in there, some can pivot off the left foot, but some can't pivot off their right. And so like at one point in time, they had a coach who told them, hey, we just gonna pivot off your left foot because that was easier to teach. And like that was, and them not understanding the right foot and the left foot pivot, right? So I see it more often than not. And the kids who kind of take a step back and take the time to understand the importance of the detail of the game, they start to build more consistency in their reps and even like in their makes and how they miss. And like that is one of the biggest things I try to preach to, especially the high school kids, like, yo, there is a such thing as a good miss. And if you notice that you're missing the same way every time, well, like that's actually better than you missing the ball going everywhere, because that means now we've built the consistency in your shot, in which you are taking the same shot and now shot or layup or whatever it may be. And now the next step is for you to understand as a player, why am I missing the way that I miss? And so I think that's pretty beautiful too as well.
So when you think of like these players that are coming to you and maybe they're lacking in some of these more fundamental skills, do you think it's because they're in situations where they're playing games and the coaches for whatever reason are just like playing to what their strengths are, or just more focused on trying to win and not build the players? Do you think it's that like the players aren't even at a younger level just aren't putting the time or don't have the structure to like work on those things that they're weak to? I know this is like a big concept here, but what do you think is the reason why that they come to you kind of lacking those skills, even though they have, all of this potential like game experience to them?
Right. I think one of the biggest things is a lot of times I was literally just talking to a parent about this today. She's a new client, fifth grader actually. And one of the things I spoke to them about is sometimes when you have a practice of 10, 11, 12 kids and you are trying to, you're building skills and you're doing some drills that work for them. But, from little Timmy to little Jameer, they might have different deficiencies in their game. And Timmy might take to what you're saying about what he struggles with faster than what Jameer does. And, you might not necessarily have enough time to really hone in to find the correct rhetoric or correct word usage in order for things to resonate with him, as opposed to, with Timmy. So for Jameer, he's a good athlete, good ball player, but, you don't have the necessary time to kind of hone in on some little small nuances because you have 11 other players. And so sometimes with coaches, it's like we have to, us as coaches, because I have both hats. It's like us as coaches, we have to kind of understand the importance of, building like a baseline of skills when it comes to our youth. And the earlier in which we do that, the better it may be. Lastly,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that, and I give a lot of credit to you coaches out there, because I mean that's a tough gig, and that's one that I know could be tough. But I think that you really gotta, as a youth coach and somebody who's there, you really got to enjoy like the process of failure with kids. You really got to enjoy the struggle a lot and understand that that's a huge part of the youth level, and you got to love that sort of thing. And
or I would to put it a little bit more positively and eloquently, you got to love the reaction of the kid when they finally do what they've been trying to do.
Yeah.
If we look at it from a standpoint like, oh, I got to fault, man, like these kids can't do this, they can't do this, can't do this. Over time, the negative energy will wane on you as a coach. Rather, as if we were to look at it from an optic of like, man, I really enjoy the fact that Lil Jameer was able to learn how to pivot with his left foot and rip it to his right hip and be able to get to the basket in a straight line so much more faster. Now he's scoring 10 more points in the game. And now I can see the joy he has in his face because A, he figured something out that he'd been working on for a very long time. And B, he's had transfer over to the court. So a lot of times us as evaluators and us as coaches, we the first thing we do is we look at it from a negative optic, when like a lot of times if we take a step back and see like the joy a kid gets when he finally is able to shoot shots and he's made 5 in a row because he's finally listened to you, like, so now you've kind of broken through and now he's going to trust you with everything for the rest of his life. And so like I think that's like what I'm big on too when I talk to my coaches. Hey, let's have a positive optic. Like, yeah, we understand what our guys can do, right? I mean, it doesn't take much long to evaluate, especially a kid. Don't take that long to tell you what his strengths and weaknesses are on a basketball court, especially when you've been watching for a while and it's younger guys, even older guys, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like we got to fall in love and we got to like change that optic from our, even as a coaching standpoint, to be more positive in what we're searching for and how we teach and how we want the kids to react, because we got to take ourselves out of it and remember that it's for the kids. And then when you see that joy, for me, this is why I train. and our coach, because when you see that joy, like that kid who like has been struggling to figure out the plays, and he finally runs the play correct, and you just see like that relief come off his shoulders, or that kid who you've been trying to tell him to elbow in and get the wrist and elbow at the rim and shoot getting that ball above your head, and when you finally see that, the enjoyment that he has from that, and not only that, it makes him feel good about himself, but it makes him fall in love with the sport even more. And now he's honing into a skill set that'll be able to affect him for the rest of his life. So I'm very big on having a positive optic on everything.
Yeah, I mean, because and I think the real cool thing, especially when you're working with those younger players, and when they get it, and not only does that light bulb go on and they're feeling really positive and all of that great stuff, but then also on like a basketball standpoint, right? Like as somebody who's training them or somebody who's coaching them, it's like, okay, they got this right, and it's going to be like a foundational piece of them that they're going to be keeping with them from
Exactly.
here on
Yeah.
out. And like
Right.
it's in their set now. Like they're feeling good, they're feeling positive, and they got it. And there's like, now that they got this, it's like, man, they can do all this other awesome stuff too now. And it's like they can take off for now from there once they got some of these skill sets done. And yeah, like you said, the joy that they get on it's like, okay, and I'm sure you've had this feeling too before, where it's like, okay, this kid has fallen in love with basketball now. Like I see
Yeah.
it now in his eyes. We got him.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's one of the beauties, man. Like I always tell the kids in my story, like I just started liking hoops just from reading little small 120-page books in my library in third grade, just reading about all the NBA teams. So it's like it's always that one small little thing, like, and then over time it just grows and grows, and then you like actually become kind of good at the sport, and then from there it even grows. That love even grows more. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You mentioned a little bit about some of the tough habits, some of the bad habits that come a little bit from players who might play too many games. And in a way, I want to kind of spin that question a little bit, because I know that this was something that was pretty topical, was players who are perhaps like overtrained to the point where what they're doing doesn't necessarily work in a game situation, or doesn't necessarily have like a game application to it. So like in your experience, I'll just kind of ask in general, do you feel that your guys that you're working with, are they out there, are they playing 21, are they playing pickup, or are they mostly focused on more of like the structured type of basketball?
I mean, for me, I provide those opportunities for my guys. I always make sure that
Nice,
we
yeah.
do like a 21 or 32 last 10 minutes of it, just so they can understand what it means to blow by your first defender and then have a feel on how to make a move against the help. And like that's not something you can really teach. It's all about, attacking. You can teach like little intangible skills that allow them to be able to do that with ripping and having your head up and understanding the game and understanding where hope comes from and all that. But I think it's very important that we do add those in there. So my groups of three, I'm always looking to kind of help them to kind of translate over what. So it's everything for me, man. I have a football background, so everything for me has like a rhyme and a reason. And so it starts off as like we do all these drills within our normal workout, and now as we transition over to our one-on-ones and our 2-on-2 and all that, it's like, okay, we worked on ball screen all day today, so now we're gonna play 2-on-2. We're only gonna do ball screens. We're gonna get all these different live reads out of it. So I think that's important as well. And one-on-one, it's like, okay, well, if we just shot a 250 pull-up jump shots, let's go ahead and only allow 3 dribble pull-ups or 2 dribble pull-ups or 1 dribble pull-ups in our one-on-one session. So now we were able to transfer over what they just did on the court, in our training, over to kind of live action. And some of the bad habits that I feel that kids have now is 2 things.
Mm,
One is when they first initially look to attack, they're not reading the defense. They actually have a preconceived move in their head. And
okay, yeah.
that is what hurts our children the most, because what if you just swing to the right and go right? Like you don't have to cross back over, spin move to score. So it's our responsibility as an educator to let these kids know is, hey, our baseline is X, Y, and Z. And now that you've got that baseline, I'm here to equip you with extra skills to possibly that could happen in the event of. So, for example, in the event that you drive hard right a couple of times it's natural human behavior to overplay your right a little bit. So what do you do next when you get to this moment here? And so like and that's why I'm big on the way we communicate, the way I communicate, the drills that in which we do, and so the kids can understand why we're doing the drills and the way we do and the way we build them out. I start everything off with jab, step, pull up, jab, step, get into the lane, rip to the hip, get to the lane, rip to the hip, pull up. And then off of that, it's like, okay, so now let's say in the event that you're playing in the game as an example, right? You rip to the hip 4 times, you're strong right hand dribbler. Okay, now let me teach you the next aspect is that it is to go left, but it's also to set up your left to come back right. And so now once they're able to understand those different nuances of the game and grow their basketball IQ in that space, then they're still playing free flow and natural and allowing as offensive players to dictate the spots they want to get to and learning how to manipulate the defense as well. So
it's you reminded me of a story of a player that I worked with before doing some one-on-one stuff, and it was so funny because it was a situation that you kind of brought up as an example of I was working with a girl and talking about the going hard to the right and making that move and going to the right and I remember this particular girl was like, well, if I do that, then, like, I mean, I'm not going to do that because the defense is just going to do this. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why are we making all these assumptions of all these things that we're already like assuming the defense is done, like is going to do or has already done all these things. It's like, well, we don't know. You haven't read the defense. You don't know exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I've had players try to think like 15 steps ahead. Well, the defense will do this, but what if they do this? It's like, well, right. Like that's why we train to read it and be able to understand what's happening. And we don't want to assume before we do anything that the defense is already going to do this. So like, we're not going to try our best move sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's all for me. It's like, I'm equipping you with what to do in the event that this happens, but we're not going to spend 45 minutes of the hour with me we're not going to spend 45 minutes with me teaching you how to do quadruple dribble moves. Like, no, like,
yeah. Right. It's like, you're not gonna have that time, and then once you start doing those, I think I know many coaches have a spot for that player right next to them on the bench too. So
yeah, and I always say something for some of you guys. Your favorite sound is gonna be that ant sound. They're like, "What's that sound?" That's the "come sit by me" sound. So it's like we gotta be able to do the basic, simple stuff, great, and then we build off of that. Until then like we have to teeter and find that fine line to game relevance and game relevance and building those skills up. So
yeah, you talked about you just kind of transitioned into the idea of the skills that you like to work on. What skills do you like to work on that, I guess, to kind of give a specific focus to this question that you think are really translating to get players like game ready? Like if they got, their season's coming up. I know we were talking as we're recording this, the tryouts are coming up as we record this. But if you got players that are like they're going to be playing a lot of games soon, or they got a showcase or tournament going up, are there any sort of skills that you want to work on or focus on or do to make sure that they are like as game ready as possible?
Yeah, for my older guys, I like to build it from layer to layer. And what I mean by that is first level scoring, second level scoring, third level scoring. So I start off with trying to equip my older guys. Let's say you got to showcase, okay, let's work on all the possible finishes that you could possibly have to do. And, I'm not saying we're out there jumping over stuff and flipping the ball off the top right corner of the backboard, but no, we're going to work on some jump stops and some step throughs and some reverse layups, just so you get like a little bit of a rhythm, because I understand the feel and the rhythm of the game, right? And then from there, we start off underneath the basket. We're working our inside hand and our inside hand, inside leg layup, outside leg, inside hand layup, all those different types of layups, and explaining to them how and when you possibly necessarily use these. And then from next level, we take to the second layer, which now it's like, okay, now we got to be able to dribble and move doing these finishes. And then finally, the third layer is we're going to bring this all the way out to the three-point line. So now when you get to that lane, you understand how to swing the ball over your head to attack a gap, because a lot of people, you drive hard, right? And that help might have help, but you see the open area at the rim. we don't know how to get there. And so I can help you with a jump stop. I can help you with bringing the ball, like Euro step, all those different things. Then we can finish on underneath inside hand, just making yourself be a little bit more crafty. And that's why I say equipping you with these different type of skill sets and tools in your toolbox to break out in the time of need. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that I like too, is like I got a guy who's coming in for a showcase. You know, I want to really help you with your finishing first and foremost, because that's the easiest shot in the game. And if you at a showcase missing layups, then your name's gonna get crossed off the list very easy. And so building from there, and then I'm gonna be honest, man. My training is simple yet complex, because it's always a rhyme and a reason and method and madness. So it's like I want you to first jab at somebody and watch them shift left, and then go right and just make the shot. So my big thing is like when you make a move, whatever move that is, understand that you are open, and now just go and make the shot. So that's one of the biggest things that I feel like is important for kids when they go to showcases and all that. When you're super nervous, just know like, yo, when you make a move, trust the move and make the shot. Take your time, step into it, hold your follow through. Excuse me.
Well, I think it makes sense, right? That like if they're going to have this big event coming up, or this big showcase type event, where there might be a lot of eyes on them, I think it just naturally makes sense that they are going to continually be showing and doing the things that they're really confident, they're really comfortable in. And it doesn't seem like it would be a good use of time to try and like go into all of these new things that they've never worked on before, make them all nervous, you know, get them all like out of their element, like play within themselves. Because as you mentioned, right, the way that you're trying to train these players is so that they are kind of ready for anything, and that you don't feel like you got to implement like this crazy new like layup package or something for them to have to do, right?
Yeah. And also it's like a matter of like understanding what they got. Like, okay, I got a kid coming in. He's like, I got a showcase on Sunday. I need a little bit work in. Well, okay, you're not gonna come in here. I'm not gonna change your whole jump shot 2 days before showcase. Like, I'm going to give you some tidbits that I know that help you make the shots. Like, okay, like, well, if you just slightly adjust your hand placement on the ball, you'll have more consistency in your shot, right? And that'll help you to follow through and get your wrist at the rim. So it's like it's little small tidbits that I'll help with. But we got to, like I said, we don't want to be going, you know, retooling and rebuilding 2 days before somebody got a showcase, or 2 weeks before somebody got a tryout. Like, so
yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I think that kind of goes with the maybe a mindset, or like a good mindset to have for anybody who is either training, or maybe who's like looking to find a trainer, is like find somebody who's going to train you, who's going to like kind of prepare you for pretty much everything, or just get you confident to be ready for any sort of situation, so they don't feel like they're going to be underprepared, right? Like if you build a skill set that allows them to read and assess the situation and make the proper move, then you know they're going to have all the tools they need in their toolbox, sort of thing.
yeah, for sure. And that's all it is. It's like you got the tool in your bag, you bring it out when you, not necessarily when you need it, but when the defense forces you to do that. You just, so then what happens is I'm pretty big on like the mind and the body. And so I always tell kids like, yo, your mind controls your body. So if you're attacking and you think about something to do, your body will probably automatically do it because you thought it. And so that's what it's so hard for kids for that to wrap around kids' mind in that space. But when they do feel that and understand that and just watch how it's like, yo, if you just look at the rim, that'll just help your shot go in more because you're seeing your target. And so it's like little small things like that, and helping people understand like how the mind kind of controls the body. And if you told yourself 1,000 times in your head as you try to figure out something you've learned new, how to do it, if you just like take a step back and just try it without thinking, like your body's naturally going to do it. And so like it's finding that fine line, that communication as well.
Yeah, and just that well, it kind of brings up something I just thought of here, is like the kind of like the mental game of everything, right? And like the way that you just sort of mentally go about and mentally approach things. I think for those players who have, that they got their mind right, they got their confidence in them, that they're feeling positive, like that has a direct translation to the way they probably are going to perform in those showcases when they mentally feel that they're in a good spot.
Yeah. And not to get off topic, but on these showcases, one of the things I tell all my kids when they go in the showcase, but I think is very important, and something that I experienced when I was going to showcases early, when I was younger, is, yo, I always tell them two things, especially my guards. I say, yo, pick up full court, rebound the ball, and play the game the right way. Every kid every who's who, anybody who plays the game, every coach knows like they can find a kid who can score the ball. Like that's not a problem. But what coaches want is we want the kids who what I like to call make impact plays that impact winning. And what impacts winning is when your guards is picking up full court and dictating tempo, and they have the ability to rebound. And when they go to make a move and you can't score, and you got 3 people on you, just give it up and like just pass the ball, man. Like, and so it's like that's one of the biggest things that I always so preach is how you going to approach your showcase. Play the game the right way and let the ball find you, let the open shots get to you. There's some things that you can control out there, taking care of the ball. You can give effort to rebound and get effort to play defense. And then the coaches and the people who need to see you and recognize you, they'll see you. And over time, they'll be able to evaluate your skill level and to see all the extra stuff that you can do as well. So
I was curious about because this does relate to the idea of these showcases and these events and everything, and I think that this is one of the concerns or one of the questions a lot of people have about balancing games and skills. And so I'm just curious your thought about this. Is that there's kind of a discussion out there that in these events and that our players, they play so many games, and even at a youth level, they're playing so many that there's a concern that players are like losing like that competitiveness or that will to win because they just play so many and the games themselves like lose meaning. Do you feel that's something that's happened? Do you think that's kind of like overblown? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I think it's tough to play 8 games in a weekend regardless. Like, let's just be
Yeah,
real.
yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree.
Like for anybody at any level. And so I don't necessarily. I just think that there are some nuances in the travel space that does take away the competitiveness of games and the whole ending them down to if you're down 25 with 2 minutes left, let the call in the game. Those type of factors, I think have kind of. I don't want to say ruin the competitive nature of basketball, but kind of have affected the competitive nature of basketball to where like being down 22 minutes is nothing but 4 stops and 4 steals. You're back in it, and so. I think there's 4 stops and 4 threes. I'm sorry. I don't know, man. I just feel like when it comes to that it's all about the program in which the kid plays in and the coaches. For me, I'm a player. I come from a background where we play hard to the final buzzer, and so that's what the product you're gonna get from my guys, regardless. Like it's playing hard isn't a skill, right? It's mandatory. Being competitive and having a competitive nature and understanding what it means to compete is something I've always preached, even to my youth guys. It's like, yo, if you're the smallest guy on the court and the first thing they say is post you up, like your energy, your competitive spirit should be like, you're not gonna post me up just because I'm the smallest guy on the team. That is what we gotta instill in our kids, in which once they have like that competitive nature, that breeds confidence as well. So I'm big on. I do understand there are some things within the youth space, like I said, the end of the games when you're up 25 with 2 minutes left and just calling them. I understand why they do that to protect the kids and players, but I just think that it's hard to play 8 games in the weekend regardless, even if you're playing in championship in the 8th game. And so
well, that brings up a whole nother thing about balance. The idea of that balance between games is I think there's a lot of discussion out there, and I'm sure you're aware of it or heard about it too, is about youth players and that their health and how much wear and tear on some of our players' bodies, right? As they're growing up playing so much basketball and things like that I'm sure that maybe is also a bit of a concern is some of making sure that our players are getting proper rest and recovery time and not completely physically, let alone mentally, like burning themselves out with how much they're playing.
yeah, man, I don't even think it's a good. If I'm being honest with you, I feel like I don't even think it's always a good thing to do is to play games every weekend. That's an AAU program. I think that especially I have kids who don't come off the court, right? They come to me once a week, and then they go AAU practice twice a week or once a week, and then they play it on Saturdays and Sundays, and they literally don't leave the court. So this kid's played 6 games, all the minutes, and for 8 straight weekends, that's like crazier than NBA schedule.
Yeah, right.
And those guys like spend millions of dollars to recover their body. You're like, yo, come on, these high school kids ain't hopping into ice baths and stretching and eating right? They eating McDonald's or eating whatever they could get their hands on, whatever money their parents gave them for the weekend to eat. So it's like it's a lot of things that go into it, and I think that with all the games, man, sometimes I'm just weary because I understand that parents want their kids to be a part of something. They want them to be on a team and they want them playing games, and playing in the game will get better. But it's about like who you playing against and how much you're playing and what you playing for. Like those also are huge factors in it too, man.
Yeah, I've always been wary, and that's a good word of it too. Is I've always, I've monitored or been really curious, and and I'd love to kind of get some more knowledge and research about that, about just even kind of some burnout rates that happen of players who get to the point
Yeah,
where, basketball just becomes like work to them and a job
yeah,
and something they have to do versus something they love doing. And I'm sure that's a real concern all over the country, maybe even internationally too.
yeah. And it's like I had to have a conversation with a guy who's thinking about quitting basketball last week, and I kind of told him like, man, like you just got to get back to like just hooping. Like, like take everything else out of it. Like, we don't got to talk about college. You don't got to talk about nothing more. Just hoop. Just shoot threes and do stuff that you enjoy on the court, man. And playing defense to compete in, and just getting back to like just hooping. Because that's what I'm saying, man. All the kids are on the internet. They seeing, oh, this guy's 6'3", he's going here, he's doing that. It's like, yo, it's not about that. Like, you can only control what you can control. It's like when you look yourself in the mirror, did you put the work in? Did you take your time? Did you enjoy it? And if that's the case, then like that's all you need. So
It's kind of like this. It's kind of like the like who is it you're playing basketball for, right? Like play it for
exactly.
you and not all the outside noise and outside pressure. And you don't. It's just crazy to me to see sometimes, and I'm sure you're really well aware of this, just how many different people are in some of our young players' ears all the time. And I'm like, man, that just seems like a lot of pressure, and a lot of people talking to them, a lot of people giving them advice, a lot of people telling them this, that, or the other. And I'm just like, this would be too much for me to hear as an adult, let alone
Yeah,
like a young kid who's got to hear all this and have all this pressure put on them. Like,
right.
yeah, I don't know how you could love basketball at that point if you're feeling
And
like that.
one of my biggest messages I always have is like, hey, like, you are, especially for my high school kids, is like, hey, you are growing into a young adult. And us as adults, we understand that we have to make decisions. And when we make decisions, we have to make those decisions, stand on them. And whatever comes with those decisions, we have to take it. So if there's something great, good, bad, or ugly, right? We made our decision and we live in our decisions. We hold ourselves accountable for that. And whatever decision that you might make, you got to stand down on it and allow for it to play out, and whatever the outcome may be in that, be accountable for that. So I'm big on giving you advice, telling you what I would do, telling you my past experience, telling you some experiences of what has happened to me or what I've heard from other people. But at the end all be all, I'm all about empowering people to make decisions that make them feel great about themselves. And I think that's another tidbit where we could go hours in talking about that, and just all the different dynamics and people in the athlete's ear, parents' ear. Oh, your son's going to be this tall. Oh, I can do this for him. I can do that for them. And it's like, yo, it's like you said earlier, who you playing for? Are you playing for yourself? You playing for your parents? You playing because his coach thinks you'll be so great? Like, what do we really play for? So that's I said. Like I said, we can go a whole 4 hours.
Yeah. I mean, that's like who are you playing for, right? Like, what is it you're working for? But I mean, that's just sort of like the whole balance of, why are some of these players like playing all these games, working on all these skills, and then that like I'm sure when a player that you work with, you could probably quickly identify right away like those players who are absolutely loving playing and love working on it and love all the light bulb moments and love being in the gym, versus I'm sure you've had experiences of players where it almost seems like it might be like a chore for them to get in there, and that balance is all wrong because it's gone too far the other end, and
Yeah.
it ain't working the way it needs to be for them.
Exactly. And it's like sometimes like, yo, you in here because your mom signed you up, or are you here because like you really want to be here? So that is huge as well, man. I really agree on that.
So what do you kind of feel overall about like kind of the state of youth basketball? What do you think we're doing well at the youth level, and what are some things you think that we might be able to work on or get better at?
I think the youth. I I think okay, so I think there's two tiers to the youth. I think there's high school youth. I think there's like youth, right? And I said that's like everybody up until sixth grade. So seventh, I'll say eighth through high school, and then seventh down. Okay, there's two versions of youth sports, and I think
Mhm.
from high school up, one of them 8th grade up is one of the most, I think, where we I think our parents need to be more educated on what the whole recruiting process is and what it looks like. And just as simple as to understanding like what a live period is and what's a dead period. Um, and I think that if our coaches and our travel programs were a little bit more transparent about that aspect, I think our parents would spend their dollars a little differently when it comes to uh, sports in that space. So I think that the biggest problem as a whole in youth sports is the people who are in control of it, like
Okay.
directors and the owners of these programs. It's like, what is your why? And I think that when you're within a community and you're the only person within that community, sometimes your why might become a little bit jaded. And when I say that, it's like, yo, I'm the only basketball trainer within X amount of miles. So it's like I can charge this, I can do this, I can kind of build this market out to be what I want it to be. And it might just be a money grab for some people. And for other people, it's like if you really care about the development and being honest and open and having that communication with parents, then like those people are the people who have constant success, who build players up the best way, who you always see have those top guys or year in and year out. And like those people who are actually in it for the kids versus the money, I think are the programs who end up going in the right way. And I think that they have the best long-term success. So the problem is in youth sports is the people who are kind of at the helm of it, right? Where I think back to when I was growing up,
Yeah.
especially in Chicagoland area, you couldn't even find a basketball tournament every weekend to play travel ball in. Now you can. Now it's like, oh, my son plays AAU. Parents go post about it on Facebook. He's playing AAU travel ball, but he's playing in one-day shootouts every weekend. And so it's like, you might not necessarily be getting that proper exposure that you might be thinking you're getting, but you just know that your son's playing AAU and that coach hasn't been transparent to let you know what type of tournaments and where you guys are going and what you guys are signing yourself up for. So I think us as adults, we see the sports space as a large financial we see the financial gains and within that space because always be kids always be in that space, but sometimes we kind of got to take a step back as the leaders of the space and to make sure we're doing good by players and families. And go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's a really fascinating point that I know this and sometimes I even catch myself though kind of making the mistake of you talk about this term AAU and it's like AAU and it's like but AAU means so many different things. Like there's
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
into AAU that just because, right, like you said, just because a player is like playing in AAU, it's like I know what that means, but I don't really know what that means because
Right.
I don't actually know what it is that they're doing and what it is that's happening. And so now, and I'm sure, I mean, man, I can't even imagine now in the Chicagoland area, like how many AAU programs there are out there and just how
Yeah.
wide a range of like what those programs are actually doing or
Exactly.
like.
Exactly. And like that's like, and I'm not here to. I don't want to knock on any AAU program.
No,
I don't
no, no. Yeah.
like that's like I want to just be very clear on that. But I do want to shed some light on like parents and their relationship with the AAU program and understanding that AAU program does have the best interest for your son. Like I feel like I had one of the top guys. I feel like I had one of the top freshmen this year, past year, who's been training with me all summer. And like I'm texting him like, yo, you got an AAU tournament this weekend? Me knowing it's a live period, and he's saying like, nah, we're not playing this weekend because my AAU coach said our team isn't good enough. I'm like, huh?
Oh
Like,
no.
yeah, and so it's like no, those type of conversations and dialogues concern me, right? Like, hold on, like, what do you mean your AU team isn't good enough? So now, is it for the kids or is it for him to protect his name in order for him not to be exposed for not putting an adequate AAU team out there, or for him not equipping you guys with the right skill set players in order to be effective? But it's a live period; you should be playing right now. So
Yeah, I mean that's like who are you doing this for? Like, right? You're trying to get the players out there and get them the exposure and get them noticed out there. And it's like when they're not ready, like, well, if they're not ready or not good enough, like What does that mean? And two, if that's the case, then like why? Like
Yeah,
what
exactly. Like
happened
why?
here?
Like wait, why aren't y'all good enough to be playing a live tournament? Like, what do you mean y'all not good enough to play live on a live weekend in a live tournament? So like, what y'all lose all y'all games on the weekend? Y'all go 0-3, and y'all lose every game by 20. Y'all losing the first game of the bronze division. Okay, y'all got to take that L, but like, you still got to play. Like, you
Yeah,
still have to
like
play. Like,
the biggest loss is not playing. I think that's the
yeah,
biggest
like you
loss
still
you
have to
could take,
play.
right?
Because for me, I got some recruiting pub in a game where we lost by 50 to the Glenn Robinson All Stars. But my performance within that losing space and me playing hard beginning to end and the stats that I was able to accumulate through that allowed for me to get on the radar of some college coaches. And
And
like my team was not that great.
I mean, if you're playing like those AAU squads, those AAU clubs that are like well known and they get a lot of attention, like I mean, they're going to be people out there watching those teams, but they'll notice you too if you're doing something.
Yeah,
They'll
they'll
be like, wait,
notice you.
who's
Like you
that
might,
guy?
yeah, see that. Okay, well, they're gonna see. Obviously, his team's not that great, but man, this guy, he hasn't gotten rattled by pressure. He's broken the traps. He's made the right. He's tried to make the right pass. He's tried to make the right play, but the guys around him. And so, like, yeah, that's why my biggest thing is like my problem with the youth sports aren't the kids. It's like the people who are the leaders of it. I just want everybody to have. This is me and my utopian thinking. I probably shouldn't do it utopian, but I just want everybody to have pure intentions.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like if you chase the idea of just getting kids better and making kids feel better about themselves, the financials will take care of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just simplifies everything, doesn't it? If
Yeah.
if you're doing it for the kids, awesome. Before we hit our concluding, Sam, I did want to ask you because I would feel bad if I didn't. So, what advice would you give to maybe parents who are, trying to look for a trainer for their kids? Well, what do you think would be like, hey, if you're trying to get a good trainer for your kids, these should be the things you should ask or look for to make sure that this is like the right person to be training and working with your kid?
I think one of the biggest, I think I think it has to be a fit from before we can even get into the basketball space of. I think it has to be a fit from like communication and personality style. Uh,
Hmm.
and then from there, I think the next steps is just coming, having a session and realizing, watching what your kid is doing in a session. I think when parents are honest in evaluation of their children, kind of knowing what the deficiencies are, and then you watch a training session and see the trainer like, okay, like, all right, my son's struggling to make left hand layups, and he's literally forced him to do 50, 60, 70 left hand layups. That's a good fit for us. You know what I'm saying? So it's like understanding that the trainer can recognize the deficiencies in your player, and it's not him just having a 10-person group session and just putting everybody through these crazy dribble combos and putting legs behind the bag. And it's like, yo, like you just met my son for the first time, and you don't even know if he can make the right hand, left hand layup, and you teaching him how to double cross between the legs behind the back. So it's just understanding that there are fundamentals of the game and recognizing and realizing like, is my son kind of being, will my son be taught that, and will he get, I think the next step in finding a trainer is the business model of the trainer going to allow for my child to get the necessary uh help to get better. Like if you go
Hmm.
into a trainer and he has 10 to 12 kids in a session, I don't know that he can give the necessary time to each individual kid in order to get better. And so
Yeah.
that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, because like that brings back to something you mentioned earlier, right? About like maybe like that kid, if you put him in a group of 10 to 12, like what the general, instruction that a coach gives might not click with them, and they might need that more personalized like language or spoken it to them in a way that clicks with them more. But if they're in a big group, then they might never get it spoken to them in that way, and now like they're not really getting that skill just because they need that more like individual connection or that individual conversation to take place.
And that's just one of the biggest things, man. Like I get that all the
Hmm.
time. It's like, well, he's my son's going into like my daughter's going to like he's in like this big group of 10, but and I see the coach on it, but he just doesn't have like the necessary time to kind of work on it over and over again. And so that's why, like for me, like I have large groups twice a week, one for high school, one for middle school kids, and one for grade school kids, like so 3 times a week.
Hmm.
But past that, I don't have groups bigger than 3. And I
Yeah.
do. So it's like because I want to be able to have everybody take a rep, then their next rep, I know what you did in the last rep. So hey, before you shoot, before you dribble, before you do this, let's speak on where you're struggling at. And then it's also my job is to kind of put the right kids within the right group as well. So
That's a
making
good
sure,
point about like you short-term memory. Just like, hey, there's only a few of you, so I know what you've been doing. I know what you've been working on. Like
right.
I just saw it, 20 seconds ago. So
Yeah.
this is what you got to do. Because I know if I was trying to juggle like 10 or 12 players, I would have forgotten immediately what would have
Yeah.
happened. And once seven other players go and do the same thing, I'm like, wait, what did I say last time? What did you do? Like, yeah, no, 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 that wouldn't work well for me. So that's another good point. No, that's good. Um, to wrap up, man, this flew by. I'm gonna have to have you on again at some point later, and we'll
I
go
hope
into
so, man.
deeper into other areas because if like I've talked about to some other guests, I feel like we've just kind of scratched the surface here. But this flew by. But for
Yeah.
now, kind of put a bow on it with a couple of questions, Coach, that I always ask to wrap up. First off, thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think that others would be able to learn from?
I would say one of the most important things that I've learned as a coach is make the decision and live with it. And so what I mean by that, I had a particular moment where game's on the line, kid gets the rebound, he's got the ball, full head of steam, and he gets over half court, and I'll call a timeout. And everybody is like, "Oh my god, like he's about to score." We end up losing the game, and oh my god, like why you call timeout? He's about to go. He was driving past everybody, about to score, and us as coaches, we are entrusted to make a decision in that split moment in time. And if I call that timeout and draw the play up and they execute it correctly and we make the shot, then no one questions my timeout. But if I call a timeout, I draw a play up, I got attention, eyes and ears of every kid. They say they know what they're doing, and they go out there and they don't execute it, then the people are going to ask me, why you call timeout? He's about to score the ball. And so I think one of the most important things for coaches is just to make a decision, trust it, and live in it. And I think that when you do that, everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, I had that exact same situation, and I'm like, well, maybe it didn't work out the way I wanted to, but like I live with it and I'm okay
Right.
with it.
I got
And
to
you
make
know
a
what?
decision.
I think, and even in the long run, if I'm like, you know what, maybe I would still make that decision over again because I still think it's the right one to do. Or maybe, in a future situation, I'll still make that same decision because maybe you think overall this is still the right thing to do, and you just kind of live with whatever it is that ends up happening. Sometimes you draw up that great play and it doesn't work out, and sometimes
Right.
you draw it up and the play gets completely busted, but then they score anyway, and you still look
Yeah,
like you know what you do. Like you just
I
it
agree.
is what it is, right?
And I just think that there's a game within the game sometimes. Like, and some
Hmm.
people, and as a coach, I think you see that a little bit more. I think you see that betterly than people in the stands or people who might be outsiders who catch that last second of the game, who just pop their head but in between their game. And I think that me and I think it's our excuse me, it's our jobs as coaches to kind of play that game within the game and understand that game within the game. And so it's like I even had a situation last year where down with 45 seconds left to go, we're down 4 and I don't foul because
Yeah.
they've gone 15 for 15 from the free throw line, but our ball pressure, and our passing, our ball denial has created us turnovers. So I'm saying, well, let's go get a stop now because we've done that multiple times. That game within the game, right? That doesn't happen. 20 seconds get wasted off the clock. We foul. They go 2 for 2. We're down 6. We come down and turn it over. And so now it's like, wow, like, should I have fouled with 50 seconds left? But was exactly what I knew what was happening was going to happen. So
Mm.
like, you just gotta make that decision and live with. Like, if we pressure the ball, deny like we've been doing all game, we get a turnover, we come down and score a bucket. Now we're down 2, and I'll call that quick timeout. I'm the greatest coach of all time. Game. So yeah,
Yep.
make the decision, live with it, and if you're wrong, and if it don't work, then you can revisit it. But always make the decision. Always make that decision and live with it.
Yep, well said. To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest what I kind of call my 60-second soapbox, but don't worry, I'm not timing you. If you want to go longer, go for it. So your platform, kind of get out like a final thought, a closing message, a closing idea, just something in general that you would like to leave the listeners with. So I'm just going to kind of open up the floor and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for having me on tonight. It's been kind of a great experience for me. Like you kind of said, I hope I can get on again and we can
Hmm.
talk a little bit more and, even dive deeper in some of these topics. I just want to say one thing, I think us as coaches and trainers, I think it's awesome that we are here to help kids grow as basketball players. But we also have to remember that kids are looking up to us, and we are mentors just as big as we are coaches. And sometimes if you see a kid struggling with some things, let's take a moment of time just to ask our players, the parents, how are you doing today? Because, you never know what someone's dealing with that day in that moment in time or that in that space in life. And, you asking them how they're doing or something that they're struggling with in that moment in time could help you to be a better communicator with them, could even help them to work out better with you, or could even just grow that relationship between you, that player, and that family, which will create a bond and a long-lasting relationship. And so I think sometimes we get so enamored with skills and drills and playing games and my team's on this, my son's on this team and he works with this guy and all that. And I just want for everybody to not forget about the human aspect of life and the things that we do, whether it's, working in the real world with sports, anything. Let's all remember that we are humans and we all have emotions. We all have feelings. And sometimes as trainers, basketball coaches, even if we're dealing with kids, semi-pro, adults, let's just take a moment of time to ask our kids, our players, how are you doing today? And let's build a personal human connection as well. And I want to leave with that.
Yeah, don't ever forget the human element, right? The people that we're actually working with here.
People, right? Yeah,
yeah. They are humans. They're not just basketball robots, right? Yeah. Well said, Coach Mike. Thank you so much. Appreciate you talking. I know we just scratched the surface on a bunch of different things, but it was fun talking about balancing games and skills, AAU trainers, whole bunch of different stuff. We'll definitely have to have you on in the future to dive deeper into stuff. But thanks for carving out some time. I know you're a busy man, so best of luck going forward and keep doing all the great work you're doing. Thank you, Coach.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.